أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is our second session for studying resurrection. We have been studying the 10th word, which started with the verse in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Look then to the signs of God's mercy, how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily, he it is who quickens the dead, or who resurrects the dead, for he is powerful over all things. And the author was following a story-like language to explain the points mentioned in this verse, or in general, resurrection. So we studied the introduction, so I'm not going to reread it. But then there was a conversational language, as if a conversation was taking place, a wise man and his empty-headed friend. And the wise friend was showing the aspects that resurrection must happen. And he's going to count 12 aspects. Last time we read the first 3. I'll reread the first 3, and inshallah, if there's no comment, we can start reading from the 4th. Okay. His faithful friend then replied, "Since you are so obstinate and rebellious, come, let me demonstrate to you with 12 out of the innumerable proofs available that there is a supreme tribunal, a realm of reward and generosity, and a realm of punishment and incarceration, and that just as this world is partially emptied every day, so too a day shall come when it will be totally emptied and destroyed." First aspect, is it at all possible that in any kingdom, and particularly so splendid a kingdom as this, there should be no reward for those who serve obediently and no punishment for those who rebel? Reward and punishment are virtually non-existent here. There must therefore be a supreme tribunal somewhere else. And we talked about this last week. Second aspect, look at the organization and administration of this kingdom. See how everyone, including the poorest and the weakest, is provided with perfect and ornate sustenance. The best care is taken of the sick. Royal and delicious foods, dishes, jewel encrusted decorations, embroidered garments, splendid feasts, all are to be found here. See how everyone pays due attention to his duties, with the exception of empty-headed people such as yourself. No one transgresses his bounds by as much as an inch. The greatest of all men is engaged in modest and obedient service, with an attitude of fear and awe. The ruler of this kingdom must possess, then, great generosity and all-embracing compassion, as well as, at the same time, great dignity, exalted awesomeness, and honor. Now, generosity requires liberality. Compassion cannot dispense with beneficence. And awesomeness and honor make it imperative that the discourteous be chastised. But not even a thousandth part of what the generosity and awesomeness require is to be seen in this realm. The oppressor retains his power, and the oppressed his humiliation, as they both depart and migrate from this realm. Their affairs are then left to the supreme tribunal of which we speak. Third aspect, see with what lofty wisdom and ordering affairs are managed. See with what lofty wisdom and ordering affairs are managed, and with what true justice and balanced transactions are effected. Now, a wise polity requires that those who seek refuge under the protecting wing of the state should receive favor, and justice Sorry, I was disconnected for a minute. Okay. So I continue from where I was left. If you can still hear me. Okay. Now, a wise polity requires that those who seek refuge under the protecting wing of the state should receive favor, and justice demands that the rights of subjects be preserved, so that the splendor of the state should not suffer. But here in this land, not 1,000th part of the requirements of such wisdom and justice is fulfilled. For example, empty-headed people such as yourself usually leave this realm unpunished. So again, we say matters are postponed for the consideration of a supreme tribunal. So these were the three aspects that we read last time. We talked about the first and second partially. Is there any comment about 1, 2, 3, all of them, some of them? I'll pause for a few seconds.
I have a quick question. So in this first aspect, he both says that, if you go up a little bit, he says that both the poorest and the weakest are provided with perfect sustenance, right? The best care is taken of the sick. But at the same time, at the bottom of the paragraph, he's saying the oppressor retains his power and the oppressed his humiliation. So their affairs are left. So I'm wondering how this sort of, how both seemingly conflicting understandings, because it seems are coexisting in one sense, right? If everyone is being taken care of, if the weakest are being provided for, but yet there is still oppressed, like how is there seems to be at least an initial disconnect. How are we to understand that is my question.
So can it be about this sentence over here? See how everyone pays due attention to his duties, with the exception of empty-headed people such as yourself. So as if in the big picture, as it says in here, the greatest of all men is engaged in modest and obedient service with an attitude of fear and awe. So since the story, he's talking about reality in terms of his story, so this sounds like he is maybe talking about great, masses such as sun, moon, galaxies. So they are engaged in modest and obedient service. So everything in the existence is doing their duty, with the exception of empty-headed people such as yourself. So when it comes to human, though, this is there as if man is left free to obey or disobey. And I guess when he comes to here, the oppressor retains his power and the oppressed his humiliation as they both depart and migrate from this realm. So I guess this is the part that it is not seen. So as if the majority, like maybe 99.9, percent of the existence or even more is a picture like that. But when it comes to humanity, this is where we observe that there are apparent contradictions to what we were observing and concluded in the big picture. So this is what I understand. What do you think?
Yes, I think that makes sense. If I think about, the proportion of human beings to all other kinds of creation, and there's millions of types of just bacteria or just other types of creation that we see are always acting within the order. So if I understand empty-headed people to represent human beings in general, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, so the attitude, the approach that the author takes is interesting. He looks at the creation in the larger scale, and based on that, arrives to a conclusion about its maker, its author. And then he says that the author, the maker of the universe or the book of existence, have left some parts apparently contradicting. Then he asks the question, what does this apparent contradicting part might mean? Why did he left this part as it is? Or what was, not even left this part as it is, but what was the point of writing that portion of the book as such, or making that portion of the existence as such? So what would that mean? Because based on the rest of the existence, he reaches to a conclusion that the maker must be wise, must be merciful, must be just. So based on all the manifestations. But then he turns to humanity and sees that, there are some contradictions that's taking place in here. So that justice, that mercy requires that this injustice should not happen. But apparently it is being allowed in here, therefore it must be handled elsewhere, is being his general attitude within all those aspects, I think. Yeah, likewise in the third one, he is now talking about wisdom and justice, and observing wisdom and justice everywhere. But then when it comes to human, we don't observe even 1 out of 1,000 of the same wisdom and justice that I observe elsewhere is not being applicable to humanity. So therefore, this picture must be completed.
Right, and just to chime in, I guess like recently, just from a recent conversation, many people will, and many people who think hard about these sort of subjects will say that, it's very difficult to come upon the conclusion of certain divine attributes just by looking at creation, even though that is almost the complete opposite approach that Nursi takes in this text that we're reading, and in the text that he writes in general. And I guess I'm thinking about what understanding leads to that sort of conception. And what comes to mind is that when people say, looking at the world, you can't deduce wisdom or generosity or justice or mercy, right? When I guess this is said, the scope is so limited, or the purview is completely upon human action in one sense. And it's not false that in human action, it is hard to find the manifestations of those kind of attributes. But I guess what's important here is that, as you said, the sort of grand scale of creation, the sort of unmagnified look upon all of creation is being offered, in which human beings are just a very small percentage of that, and that sort of compels me to expand my scope of what I am observing when I look for certain attributes, or when I just observe in general. And that means observing, and this I guess is just we're familiar with this already, but that means observing all types of creation, and it means observing the order of the sun and the moon and the trees and the plants, and recognizing that there is an active and continuous displayment of attributes there, and that if I look to just human action and say, well, I don't see those attributes, and so like it's impossible, or it's a terrible method of deducing that a creator must be wise, must be just, must be merciful. There's a sort of inherent flaw in that approach, due to its very restrictedness in what it's examining or what it's choosing to examine. So those are just some thoughts I want to share, but thank you.
So that's a good point. That's a good point, and makes me think about myself. For example, I am an untrained eye when it comes to understanding arts. And if I go to art museum, and there are some paintings which are supposedly art, which I still think they are not, but artists would say that, well, it's because of you. And once they start explaining me or educating me about how to look at art, so giving me a perspective, then probably, like, just take the example as an example, I will start seeing the wisdom there. Because when we think about the first revelation, when a prophet has received the revelation as read, and when his response was, I don't know how to read, this was actually a very good point depicting human's position on earth. Because if you think about it, the messenger goes to the cave, someone who is not able to make sense of the existence, something like seems to be meaningful, but there are a lot of injustices when it comes to the crux of the existence, which is humanity. Like the rest of the universe seems to be within an order, but then you come to human, which is really the center of the existence, and everything gets messed up over there. So it is hard to really make sense of that. And but in here, prophet's attitude was, I don't know how to make sense of that. I cannot read that. He was not saying that it is impossible or such a thing does not exist, but he was saying that I don't know how to do that. So this is why he by being this, or being conscious, self-conscious about, I don't know how to read, yet I know that there must be something in here. So this riddle has to be solved. This is when the maker of the existence comes and starts speaking and says, I teach you the things that you do not know. So this is why, to read divine names in the creation, I need to learn the perspective from its maker. The maker should teach me how to read those divine names from within the existence. So once he shows me, yes, I can confirm and I can say, I agree, that's true. This, what you say is perfectly matching what now I am seeing. But if you have not shown it to me, well, before you showed it to me, I was not even aware of its presence, its existence. So this is why when your friends say it is hard to see names or certain names of the creator, I think it might be true from that perspective. Actually, for human, unless the creator teaches me how to read the universe in the name of its Lord, I wouldn't be able to make sense of it. I wouldn't be able to understand it. But once he teaches me, I can confirm it. What does that mean? I am given tools to confirm. but I am not given tools to create. So I can accept the truth, saying that, yes, indeed, what you are saying is right, and I confirm this, but I am not given the tools to come up with that truth by myself. So this is why the first revelation is beautifully depicting this reality of human. But aside from that, I mean, this is more general picture, but aside from that, another reason, as you were mentioning about your friend's point, might be that, yes, we are focusing too much, or we start our observation from human injustices, and this is how we start defining the creator. We are not even seeing the, contradiction. It is as if, no, it is just all unmerciful, all injustice. And yeah, Sister Aishandra, you have a note there. Would you like to speak it?
Yeah, I mean, you already said it, but I guess this also just once again underlines the necessity of reading the creation with the Quran's instruction. Rather, as opposed to thinking that the Quran is just something that will confirm what I find out there, as in, you know, I observe creation, I come upon certain truths, and then I go to the Quran, yes, it's confirming. Rather, it will confirm that, but it also plays a sort of pivotal role, primary role in approaching, understanding, interpreting creation in the first place. It's as you said, it's a tool there, of which without I am unequipped, and I am, as the Prophet himself said it, peace be upon him, unable to read, not knowing how to read. So I just thought that was an important emphasis.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. So this is why it is important to be able to acknowledge that I do not know how to read, and also, and in this sense, what I understand from that is I am not able to figure out why things are happening as they are happening. Why am I having this in my family relations? Why am I going through that in my job environment? Why am I getting old? Why is my hair getting white or just falling off? Like all these things, despite my wishes to be the exact opposite way, why? And all these, actually, humanity, by its tongue of disposition, is saying that we do not know how to read. Because as much as we try to fix those problems, we are just getting into a bigger troubles. I mean, we are not improving, as if the whole civilization, despite its luxuries, are getting into a deeper hole. We are digging our holes, as if. So we are, by the tongue of disposition, we are saying we do not know how to read, and which was also the case at the time of the Prophet. People with the tongue of their disposition were saying that we don't know how to read. This is why our society is so much messed up, but they were not consciously speaking it out with their tongue. The one person who was consciously also speaking it out was given the answer. So the humanity was in need of that message. This is why humanity received the message, but the message was given to one among that humanity, that society, which was also consciously aware of it. The rest of the humanity was unconsciously feeling it, demonstrating it, maybe except a few empty-headed ruler class, which were enjoying the wealth, but the rest of the people were really suffering and struggling. But somebody within that society was conscious. So I guess now I should try to become conscious of the fact that I do not know how to read, despite all the university, higher level education I got. I really do not know how to read my life, how to read what I am going through, what is the purpose, why am I in here, where did I come from? I don't have any answer for that. And actually, a few days ago, when I was in office, a colleague came and he said he's retiring on Friday. It really struck me because this person I get to know him from 11 years ago when I first came to here and got my first teaching assistant appointment. We were working together with him, and now he's retiring. So I felt like just 30 years later, I am sitting in his chair and I'll be saying farewell to somebody else. So with all my ambitions, all my goals and everything, I said, well, it looks like it's going to be consumed by that moment because that person doesn't have any of them anymore. His question was, what am I going to do with my free time now? So he was desperate in this sense. So these are the sort of things that I should be declaring or consciously acknowledging. I do not know how to read. Okay, so any comments? If not, I will read the fourth aspect. Okay. Fourth aspect. Look at these innumerable and peerless jewels that are displayed here. These unparalleled dishes laid out like a banquet. They demonstrate that the ruler of these lands is possessed of infinite generosity and an inexhaustible treasury. Now, such generosity and such a treasury deserve and require a bounteous display that should be eternal and include all possible objects of desire. They further require that all who come as guests to partake of that display should be there eternally and not suffer the pain of death and separation. They further require that all who come as guests to partake of that display should be there eternally and not suffer the pain of death and separation. For just as the cessation of pain is pleasurable, so too is the cessation of pleasure painful. Look at these displays and the announcements concerning them, and listen to these heralds proclaiming the fine and delicate arts of a miracle-working monarch and demonstrating his perfections. They are declaring his peerless and invisible beauty, and speaking of the subtle manifestations of his hidden beauteousness. He must be possessed, then, of a great and astounding invisible beauty and perfection. This flawless hidden perfection requires one who will appreciate and admire it, who will gaze on it, exclaiming, MashaAllah, thus displaying it and making it known. As for concealed and peerless beauty, Sister Aishana, would you like to continue reading? If you are available.
Sure. Sorry. From where should I continue? As for concealed and peerless beauty, it too requires to see and be seen, or rather to behold itself in two ways. The first consists of contemplating itself in different mirrors, and the second of contemplating itself by means of the contemplation of enraptured spectators and astounded admirers. Hidden beauty wishes then to see and be seen, to contemplate itself eternally and be contemplated without cease. It desires also permanent existence for those who gaze upon it in awe and rapture. For eternal beauty can never be content with a transient admirer. Moreover, an admirer destined to perish without hope of return will find his love turning to enmity whenever he imagines his death, and his admiration and respect will yield to contempt. It is in man's nature to hate the unknown and the unaccustomed. Now everyone leaves the hospice of this realm very quickly and vanishes, having seen only a light or a shadow of the perfection and beauty for no more than a moment, without in any way being satiated. Hence, it is necessary that he should go towards an eternal realm where he will contemplate the divine beauty and perfection.
So this part is an interesting part, actually. So let me first summarize what I understand from that, and then you correct me if I'm wrong or you add the points. So author is talking about, like, looking at the creation again, starting from there. There are so many innumerable peerless jewels, or many of the things, many of the beauties are being laid in front of us in this existence. So this is demonstrating that the ruler or the owner is so generous. He has so infinite treasury and so much beauty is with him. So what does this say? Like, having so much beauty and then putting them into display. What does this entail? What's the result of that? Says there must be some point of being seen. So this is how he is arriving to a conclusion. And from there he says, this one who wants to be seen, if this is his point, then showing things temporarily doesn't make sense. Because this owner of all these beauties is not bound to time and space like me, yet his observers are time-bound beings such as myself. So from 2 points of view, it doesn't make sense that this showing or displaying it to observers that are time-bound and just going to die doesn't make sense. First, because such an infinite beauty wants to be known infinitely, wants to be seen, or should want to be seen infinitely. Second, if otherwise, if he does not be seen infinitely, like, the temporary observer is going to, rather than appreciating the beauty, they're going to start hating the beauty, because it then becomes inaccessible for them. And rather than appreciating, they will start arguing against the beauty. So because of these two reasons, he says, it must be the case that the one who shows that this beauty to people would keep showing them, displaying them the beauty. Otherwise, it's going to contradict, in the first place, why he would be displaying it to the people. In a nutshell, this is what I understand. What do you think? Okay. So does the silence mean agreement, or does it mean we didn't understand? We shall read it for a second time. Okay. No, so I think this sentence is, so let me read the sentence. They further require that all who comes as guests to partake of that display should be there eternally and not suffer the pain of death and separation. But this is an important observation. So all those bountiful, beautiful display should be, the guests for that should be eternally there, not just temporarily, because here he says, just as ending of pain is pleasure, the opposite also true, which is the end of pleasure is painful. So I am an observer and I enjoy the pleasure right now, but the end of this pleasure is a pain in and of itself. So in this case, what happens is he invited me to this banquet, and now he says, okay, it's over. Now go back to nothing. So this going back to nothing, like after tasting youth, after tasting strength, now taking them away from me is such a pain, because all my moments without those beautiful resources that he once gave me becomes a source of pain. And this is what I was observing with my friend who was retiring. So he experienced good moments of life, and now all this is being taken away from him, or has already been taken away from him.
And in fact, just to jump in, sorry, I should really be using the raise hand function.
Oh, no,
but,
no.
Many will say that if something pleasurable is going to be taken away, like, I'd rather not have it or have known it or tasted it in the first place, right? Because that pain, as you mentioned, becomes a sort of torturous pain. And so to be given existence, to taste existence, and then know that there's going to be a sort of immediate stop to it, is torture. And even for those, who I would say like commit suicide or otherwise, it's because that cessation of pleasure is so painful, right? It's not necessarily a lack of existence that is being desired, but rather a cessation of pain in that case, and that pain is from the cessation of pleasure in the first place. So it's just, I think that line is very important. For just as the cessation of, sorry for background noise, just as the cessation of pain is pleasurable, so too is the cessation of pleasure painful. Someone was telling me the other day as well that this is why oftentimes, if you're going through a hardship, it'll you'll know that, oh, well, once it ends, there will be something pleasurable awaiting. So there's something to look forward to. But if you're going through a good time, a contentful time, you know that it's going to come to an end, so it becomes painful in and of itself as well. And it's kind of funny how that works.
Yes, that's true. And actually, in elsewhere, the author mentions that with that understanding, actually, it's better to avoid joy, because it seems to be leaving a mark, a painful mark on you. And in terms of hardship, it's even better for you because it's temporary hardship, but leaves you a longer time of joy. So, which is contrary to how my desires would like. But interestingly, this is how human is. And actually, this is a mark left on human for eternal life. If you think about it, why am I made like this? I mean, despite my desire for joy, it looks like joy is against me, working against me, which is a, if you like, constant reminder put within everything, saying that if there is no eternal life, you better avoid taking any sort of joy, because it's going to cause you trouble. And such a contradiction then sits at the very core of my interaction with the existence, with the life, with everything. Okay. So, and he keeps reading the existence. So these are actually a good way to look at the existence. Listen to these heralds proclaiming the fine and delicate arts of miracle-working monarch and demonstrating his perfections. Like, this word is a generally an interesting word that I came across in authors' writings, but heralds. And seeing creation or the existence as heralds is a very interesting way of looking at them, as they are proclaiming their maker. So rather than just saying that, oh, it's just an apple, it's just a bird, but thinking about the bird as it's proclaiming the fine and delicate arts of its maker, demonstrating its maker's perfections, and making that sound, for example, to remind me of that, to invite me to that. Okay. Yes. So we talked about this part. For concealed and peerless beauty requires to see and be seen. So there's this interesting aspect of to see and be seen that the author is mentioning. So in a sense, he says the creation is first and foremost being like the creator himself is observing, must be observing his creation, is what I am seeing from here. Which is an interesting discussion to have. We can postpone it to the truths, as the author is just making an introduction in those aspects to warm up our minds. But if you have any comments about this two aspects, I would be more than happy to listen. Okay. Yeah, so now I am reading the second part. Then it desires also, like this peerless beauty, desires also permanent existence for those who gaze upon it in awe and rapture, because eternal beauty can never be content with a transient admirer. So this is one aspect of it. The eternal beauty can never be content with a transient admirer. So eternal beauty, reading it from reverse, eternal beauty requires eternal admirers. And then he comes up with the second aspect, saying that an admirer destined to perish without hope of return will find his love turning to enmity whenever he imagines his death, and his admiration and respect will yield to contempt. So this is a very beautiful way of reading man's nature, actually. So the author is saying that the one who desired man's nature made it in a way that man hates the unknown and the unaccustomed. And now everyone leaves the hospice of this realm very quickly and vanishes, having seen only a light or a shadow of the perfection and beauty for no more than a moment, without in any way being satiated. So what does this mean? That means the one who made the man in this nature must have an eternal realm where that man, that human, can contemplate the divine beauty and perfection. Yeah. If there are no comments, I'll read the fifth aspect. Okay. The fifth aspect. See, it is evident from all these matters that the peerless being is possessed of most great mercy. For he causes aid to be swiftly extended to every victim of misfortune, answers every question and petition, and mercifully fulfills even the lowliest need of his lowliest subject. If, for example, the foot of some herdsman's sheep should hurt, he either provides some medicine or sends a veterinarian. Come now, let us go. There is a great meeting on that island. All the nobles of the land are assembled there. See, a most noble commander, bearing exalted decorations, is pronouncing a discourse and requesting certain things from that compassionate monarch. All those present say, yes, we too desire the same, and affirm and assent to his words. Now listen to the words of that commander favored by his monarch. O monarch that nurtures us with his bounty, Show us the source and origin of these examples and shadows you have shown us. Draw us nigh to your seat of rule. Do not let us perish in these deserts. Take us into your presence and have mercy on us. Feed us there on the delicious bounty you have caused us to taste here. Feed us there on the delicious bounty you have caused us to taste here. Do not torment us with desperation and banishment. Do not leave your yearning, thankful, and obedient subjects to their own devices. Do not cause them to be annihilated. Do you not hear him thus supplicating? Is it at all possible that so merciful and powerful a monarch should not totally fulfill the finest and highest aim of his most beloved and noble commander? Moreover, the purpose of that commander is the purpose of all men, and its fulfillment is required by the pleasure, the compassion, and the justice of the king. And it's a matter of ease for him, not difficulty, causing him less difficulty than the transient places of enjoyment contained in the hospice of the world. Having spent so much effort on these places of witnessing that will last only 5 or 6 days, and on the foundation of this kingdom, in order to demonstrate instances of his power, he will, without doubt, display at his seat of rule true treasures, perfections, and skills in such a manner, and open before us such spectacles that our intellects will be astonished. Those sent to this field of trial will not then be left to their own devices. Palaces of bliss or dungeons await them. So this is an interesting aspect. So apparently he was talking about the messenger. But the intro paragraph is interesting, how he motivated us to start talking about a noble commander who is going to be so conscious about us as humans on this earth and would be talking to or asking from the king. So let me reread this first paragraph and let's try to see how this is related. See, it is evident from all these matters that the peerless being is possessed of most great mercy. So he starts with mercy. How? Because he causes aid to be swiftly extended to every victim of misfortune, answers every question and petition, and mercifully fulfills even the lowliest need of his lowliest subject. If, for example, the food of some herdman's sheep should hurt, he either provides some medicine or sends a veterinarian. So, what do you think about this? Do you what is the truth behind this metaphor that he gives? How does this apply to reality? Like he is telling this as a example for mercy. So I guess taking it as a story, if this was really the case, if there was a kingdom in which even the, let's say, the most minute detailed need on the top of a mountain, some herdman's sheep is hurt, and then the king of this country immediately either sends them a medicine or sends them a veterinarian. Like imagine a helicopter goes to that cowboy herdsman and then takes the sheep or brings them some health care. I would say, yeah, definitely this kingdom is so much merciful. It's a great mercy. All the needs are being fulfilled, swiftly being extended to every victim of misfortune, answers every question and petition, right? And this is how today, when some countries are extending their hand of help to even the very far distant cities of their people, then we say, oh, such a big country, such a merciful, such a just, and their wealth distribution is so beautiful, so on and so forth. So how is that applicable to real life that the author is talking about that? What do you think? Do you observe this in creation?
I mean, jumping in again, I think starting with myself, right? Because I can answer that most fully. I think it comes down to, again, learning how to read in the name of my sustainer, right? Because if I don't know how to read, then even if aid does come to me when I find myself to be in apparent misfortune, then I won't be able to recognize it or be a conscious recipient of it. And so an aid can come in very different forms, right? It may be in a physical form, it may be in the form of a certain understanding, it may be in the form of a certain realization that I am only receptive to when I'm in a state of apparent misfortune. And so, recognizing it in myself, when I'm thirsty, I receive water. When I'm hungry, I receive food. When I, let's say my body needs rest or recovery, then I am, whether I like it or not, subjected to my house, to my bed, right, for rest. And so I think, I think I can experience that for myself in many ways. And then when it comes to the rest of creation, I mean, it's hard to say anything completely comprehensively because there's only so much that I may witness or sorry about that, I may observe. But to the extent that I do, I may see certain types of creation that are in apparent forms of misfortune receive aid. And then I may also not see them receive aid, and maybe they die or perish. But that itself may be an aid in some way. So I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer.
So I think if I don't take what I am given for granted and realize that it is being given, in my body, all my cells are in need of food, and they are being distributed and provided. Or like, who gives them this? Or I am in need of joy. I am in need of, my ears are in need of sound, my eyes in need of light. These are all being provided. Let's take it a little wider. Let's say I am cutting something and like making salad, and my finger gets cut. Immediately, like the blood, gets solid in there. I don't know what's the word for that. And bleeding stops. So I am being sent help right there. And then within a few days, I see that the pain in there or the cut in there is being healed. I didn't go to any doctor. I didn't go anything, but this healing comes, right? So just expand it. This is how it is being. So my needs in all scales are being answered. If I do not take them for granted and realize that actually they are being provided, because these are really jobs to be done. Because there are certain diseases, for example, where blood is not getting solid in certain people, then they need to use medicine to take care of that. So then you realize, oh, I was being provided this for the whole time. And not only me, every living being is being provided with that for the whole time. So our maker is so much paying attention to us, actually. And like if I climb mountain, and while climbing mountain, I fell and some part of me bleeds, and then my blood gets just dries there. At top of mountain, I am being given this help. So that is the level of mercy, and every victim of misfortune are being answered. Yeah, and mercifully fulfills even the lowliest need of his lowliest subjects. I observe that in many, many levels. Generally, I complain when I do not see the way I want it to be addressed. And I say, oh, there is such a thing. But if I just be careful, be conscious about how much I am being given, then I would say, oh, yeah, actually, I was being provided so much. And now when I am not given it, actually, it's an invitation for me to remember, oh, for the whole time I was being given, rather than using it as an occasion to argue against and complain. I should take it as an opportunity to remember all the things that I should have done, but because of being ignorant, I neglected of doing so. So this being said, now that the picture seems that truly my maker is extending, like showing his mercy by answering all the questions, answering all the victims of misfortune, what does that then mean? What is, as a humanity, now he talks about some in that island, which is, the author is seemingly talking about the time of the prophet. And he says there is a noble commander. He is talking about, he's asking something from that maker who is hearing and responding to the tiniest needs of his people. There is one among those people who is explicitly asking from that maker. So far with the first paragraph, he established that the king is so much aware of and responsive to his people. And now he says there is one man among the people of that king, and actually he is an important person. He is not just some arbitrary person, but he is an important commander, and this is what he is asking from. O monarch that nurtures us with his bounty. So he is aware that he is being nurtured. Now he is asking for more, though. He says, show us the source and origin of these examples and shadows you have shown us. He is aware that he is being nurtured, but he is also aware that what is being provided to him is just examples and shadows. Like the manifestations in here are just examples and shadows, and saying that, oh, show us the source and origin of these examples. Draw us near to your seat of rule. Do not let us perish in these deserts. Desert. Yes, deserts. Okay. Always I mix it up. Do not let us perish in these deserts. Take us into your presence. So it's interesting how he is taking this world as a desert, because as it is, if you leave us in here, it's nothing but a desert, even if it is the most green environment in itself. If this is the end, no matter how beautiful it is so ugly, so dry, so meaningless. Take us into your presence and have mercy on us. Feed us there on the delicious bounty you have caused us to taste here. He is very much aware that this is a place to taste. And we do not get satiated in here. This is why it's a place of taste. Like if you go to, let's say, some shop, and there is a person who is offering, just for tasting. There are people like that in Costco, for example. They put things into tiny, small cups and offer you that. And you taste and it tastes good. But you cannot fill your stomach there. They would say, okay, just one or at most two, and you need to buy more. So in this life, we are being caused to taste, but we never enjoy it. So this person, this commander, on behalf of all of us, is just voicing actually what everybody is very deeply feeling. It says, feed us there on the delicious bounty you are making us taste here. Do not torment us with desperation and banishment. Do not leave your yearning, thankful, and obedient subjects to their own devices. Do not cause them to be annihilated. So this supplication is so loud of a supplication. It is the supplication of humanity, but this very important person is supplicating that. It's not this, what, as he was saying, the tiniest subject of that king is being responded. How about this important commander and his so important request? Is this going to be left unanswered? So he says, moreover, he doesn't leave it there. Moreover, the purpose of that commander is the purpose of all men. What he's asking is actually what humanity is asking, knowingly or unknowingly. And its fulfillment is required by the pleasure, the compassion, and the justice of the king. It also works for the king. What he is asking is also what, it's not against or contradicting the king. It's actually perfectly aligned with the purpose of the king as well. And it's a matter of ease for him. It's not a difficulty. So it might be that, well, it might be for the interest of the king, but it's too costly. Zainab. So it is for the interest of him as well. And also it's ease for him, not difficulty, causing him less difficulty than the transient places of enjoyment contained in the hospice of the world. We can talk about that actually. What does he mean by this making of this transient place of enjoyment is not easier for him to be created than an eternal realm? What does that mean? We can talk about that. But I'll continue, but this is something that we can discuss. So having spent so much effort on these places of witnessing that will last only 5 or 6 days as the foundation of this kingdom, in order to demonstrate instance of his power, he will without doubt display at his seat of rule true treasures, perfections, and skills in such a manner, and open before us such spectacles that our intellects will be astonished. So as of saying that this transitory realm is being put so much effort, so much, if you like, spent so much resources to make this transient realm. So, and it's only going to last for 5 or 6 days. Yes, Sister Aishana, please go ahead.
Just going back to that sentence you had highlighted. So I just want to read it again. Moreover, the purpose of that commander is the purpose of all men, and its fulfillment is required by the pleasure, the compassion, and the justice. So and its fulfillment, the fulfillment of the purpose is required by that pleasure, the compassion, the justice of the king, and it is a matter of ease for him. So I just had a question of who's the him referring to? Is it the king? Is it a human being? Is it the commander? Because it sounds like it's the king, but I don't know how that makes sense. So that's my first clarifying question. So yeah, just the question was, when it says him, is it referring to human beings? Or is it referring to the king?
It should be to the king.
It should be to the king. Okay. So then, all right, that's what it sounded like, but for some reason it didn't make sense to me if it was the king, because I mean, when it's talking about ease and difficulty, I mean, these seem like inapplicable terminologies to the king. Especially, what would it mean for this fulfillment to cause him less difficulty? I mean, I'm whatever is tasted upon here in this world, right? Whatever is created for me here, all of its signposts to an absolute source. And so there is no more or less difficulty when it comes to an absolute. So I'm trying to understand the point the author is trying to make here.
So, yes, I guess when he starts talking about it in depth, he would say that ease or hardship doesn't really exist for him, but he is speaking from a human perspective. And from your end, all human, you would think that making this much of things and constantly changing them is costly, huh? But then think about that, he's not going to change anything. So I mean, from your end, from a human point of view, making constant change is something more costly. Making an eternal realm would even cost less if you think about it from a human point of view. So since he is able to make it here, it's not a matter of, oh, it's going to be more costly and hard for him to do. The fact that he is able to do that is a sign that he can do anything and everything. So I think this is to speak to my human sense. But as you said, the way the creation is taking place, I should be able to say that he must have absolute power, absolute knowledge, absolute wisdom. So when it comes to absolute, quantities do not, actually is not a matter of discussion. So more or less doesn't make any sense. Hence, there is no limit to his power. There's nothing that can prevent. So in reality, this is what it is. But I guess from here, he is speaking to more my first level of senses, is what I would say. I mean, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because it's a common, it might be a thought or a whisper that might come. So yes, it works for him. It's for the interest of the king as well. But is he capable? And then saying that if he is, which he is, capable of creating this realm, such a realm, there shouldn't be any. It wouldn't be any harder. Actually, in the original language, he's using this. He's saying that bu misafirhanelerdeki muvakkat müzekkahlar kadar ağır gelmez. It wouldn't be any harder than creating this transitory creation. So if he is able to do that, he's able to do the other one, is the way he is forming the sentence in the original language. So as if saying that since he does this, he can do anything, is what I understand. So we have too much background noise here. Would anybody like to read sixth aspect?
I can read, inshallah. Sixth aspect. Come now, look, all these imposing railways, planes, machines, warehouses, exhibitions show that behind the veil, an imposing monarch exists and governs. And the footnote there reads, when a vast army in the present age receives the order, take up your weapons and fix your bayonets in accordance with the rules of war while on maneuver, it comes to resemble a forest of upright oaks. Similarly, when the soldiers of a garrison are commanded on festive days to don their parade uniforms and pin on their medals, it will resemble from one end to the other a colorful and ornate garden where all the flowers have blossomed. Conversely, when on the parade ground of the world the various and infinite species of the soldiery of the pre-eternal monarch, angels, jinn, men, animals, and even unfeeling plants, receive the order of be. And it is in the struggle for life's preservation and the command, take up your weapons and equipment and prepare to defend yourselves. When they fix the minute bayonets that are the spiked trees and plants found throughout the world, then they resemble a magnificent army advancing with bayonets fixed. Similarly, each day and each week of the spring is like a festival for each class of the vegetable kingdom, and each class presents itself to the witnessing gaze of the pre-eternal monarch with the jeweled decorations he has given them, as if it were on parade in order to display the fine gifts he has bestowed on them. It is as if all the plants and trees were heeding a dominical command, don the bejeweled garments produced by God's artistry, put on the decorations made by his creative power, flowers and fruit. The face of the earth then comes to represent a parade ground on a splendid festive day, the magnificent parade brilliant with the uniforms and jeweled decorations of the soldiers. Okay, so there's a continuation of that.
Yeah, it keeps going, but I don't know how I will fit into the
I
screen.
can try to also, one moment. Perhaps I'll just open it up and read it that from there.
So maybe, okay, now it fits, I guess.
It fits. Okay. Such wise and well-ordered arrangement and ornament demonstrates
One, two, three, four,
Just a
five.
second.
of a certainty to all who are not blind, that they derive from the command of a monarch infinite in power and unlimited in wisdom. Such a monarch requires subjects worthy of himself, but now you see all his subjects gathered in a hospice for wayfarers, a hospice that is filled and emptied each day. It can also be said that his subjects are now gathered in a testing ground for the sake of maneuvers, and this ground also changes each hour. Again, we may say that all his subjects stay in an exhibition hall for a few minutes to behold specimens of the monarch's beneficence, valuable products of his miraculous art. But the exhibition itself changes each moment. Now the situation and circumstance conclusively shows that beyond the hospice, the testing ground, the exhibition, there are permanent palaces, lasting abodes, and gardens and treasuries full of the pure and elevated originals of the samples and shapes we see in this world. It is for the sake of these that we exert ourselves here. Here we labor, and there we receive our reward. A form and degree of felicity suited to everyone's capacity awaits us there. So I guess just little bit of reflection from my end before I pass it on is what's being highlighted here to me most is this sort of constant change, right? There's the constant filling and emptying of that hospice that is filled with travelers. There is that testing ground, and that ground is also constantly changing. And then there's the exhibition hall, in which all the products, all the artwork is also constantly changing. And so there is this constant, consistent change that's always happening, I guess. And you know, just as and this example may have been given before, just as there may be, you know, a pop-up exhibition somewhere, and there may be beautiful pieces of artwork there. I mean, the beauty of that artwork requires that it has a home or a lasting abode, right? And I guess that's one part or one aspect of the argument that's being made here, that there are permanent palaces, lasting abodes, and gardens full of the pure and elevated originals of the samples. So like there was all over in many cities, the Van Gogh exhibitions, and in those, like the actual original pieces of the artwork are not being shown, but you know that they're being preserved or held in an official building or wherever, or museum perhaps. It is for the sake of these that we exert ourselves here we labor, and there we receive our reward. I mean, it's both, right? We do labor here, but we're also able to enjoy the samples and the shapes of the exhibition hall here. It's not that we can't enjoy anything, but it does leave us wanting for more. It does leave us wanting to have an enduring exhibition, have an enduring that constant change that one experiences in life can also not fully satisfy that yearning for a sort of enduring, permanent, secure form of existence, if you will. So I think it's both that, you know, whatever he might mean, and I'm not sure whatever he might mean by laboring here. I mean, the labor here is being able to recognize that monarch, being able to recognize the beneficence or the products here, and being able to recognize the purpose that they're representing here as well. But again, I do taste the reward here, and I think that's an important part of it too, such that I can anticipate the fuller reward of experiencing its permanent state, if you will. So those are just 2 cents.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. So, the author is making an observation about this world, and so how solid of a kingdom or a monarch is behind the veils, and like the subjects in here, how unfitting they are. Because he says this as if you look at this existence, it looks like it's a temporary exhibition hall, and it's as if it's a testing ground. So as if people are getting trained in here. So if there is training, if the exhibition hall is temporary and the kingdom is so solid, then there must exist like constant exhibition halls, and this training should come to be rewarded at some point. What is the point of training if it's not going to be reused at some point? So making these observations about the existence, taking it as a education ground, this is what I understand from this testing ground. It's an education ground, and the manifestation, the exhibition hall being kept only temporarily, despite the arts being so magnificent. That should mean that, as this sentence I think is really the summary of this part, such a monarch requires subjects worthy of himself. But this world is not really fitting that. And there was okay, Ali is not going to allow me to talk.
I guess just one part that I'll pitch in here, but before I do, Brother Sohail, you can talk since I've talked quite a bit today.
Assalamualaikum. No, it's okay. I was just going to say that without a permanent place or an afterlife, you can't, there is no contentment whatsoever. I mean, there is no point to even believe, really. Even if one were to say that, there must be a creator and sustainer and monarch and king. Without an afterlife, it's pointless, because so what? That is, in a sense, that's punishment. That's unwise. That's craziness. As I think Yusuf was alluding to earlier, to create, but to not create eternally. While I desire eternity. So I may experience some sort of like joy in this world, but fundamentally it's temporary. It's never satisfactory at the end of the day. Because everything, I mean, even sort of ideally, even when we sort of do anything, for example, let's say eat something, not only does it look towards its maker, to God, but theoretically or ideally, it looks towards paradise or a place of eternity. So in this regard, like, our eye is always towards those two things, to the maker and the permanent abode that he has put places desire within us for. So I can't enjoy something within the context of the world as my only focus, because the moment I experience it and it goes away, like, I already kind of know it's going away the moment it happens. If my focus is the world itself, and I may be like, I may say, oh, I believe in the hereafter, but if my eye is towards the world in and of itself when I experience something, rather than using that as a sort of means to look towards paradise or to a permanent place, then it becomes a pain.
Jazakallah khair. There was one point that, again, nice observations, that when the author was saying such a monarch requires subjects worthy of himself, again, he made an observation from the creation and saying that when a vast army in today receives the order, take up your weapons and fix your bayonets, so they look like a forest of upright oaks, says the same thing applies in every spring, or in this creation. You do observe that in every spring, every animal, every plant is receiving when they receive the command from their creator, they take up their weapons. If you look at the plants with their thorns, or animals. So this very orderly setup is what gives the author the sense that this is a monarch with such a power, such a magnificence, but is the subjects worthy of such a monarch is his question. So it's I think this way of reading the universe is a very beautiful way of reading it. So inshallah, let me pause here for today with all the background sound that I have here. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم من الحمد لله رب العالمين.